You are going to love this 2-hour English masterclass because you are going to learn English through stories. Today, we're going to review 4 different news articles together so you can improve all areas of your English, and you're going to learn 248 advanced phrases for your daily conversations. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Our headline: the electric car revolution. Is it realistic or optimistic? First, let's talk about revolution, the electric car revolution. In this context, a revolution represents a very important change in the way people do things. You're probably familiar with the tech revolution, the technology revolution, which very much changed the way people do things. So the electric car revolution, a change from gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles. Is it realistic? Realistic meaning that it is likely to happen. So I'll write that, likely to happen, or optimistic. Generally, optimistic is considered a positive, but in this case, it's more of a negative because they're saying, oh, is it optimistic? Meaning it's overly hopeful. Overly hopeful. To be honest, I feel like they should have said, is it realistic or overly optimistic or too optimistic? Because when you add too in front of a word, it can make a positive word negative. But in this case, without the overly or too, to me, the word optimistic sounds positive, but I know based on the context that they actually want it to be negative. Too optimistic, which means it's too hopeful, overly hopeful. For example, you could say it's overly optimistic to think we'll live on Mars in 10 years. So it's saying that this is too hopeful. It's not likely. It's not realistic. So what do you think? Do you think the electric car revolution, the change from gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles, is that realistic or optimistic? Overly optimistic, too optimistic? Put your answer in the comments. Put realistic or overly too optimistic. I'd be interested to know what you think. Let's continue. Governments and motor manufacturers. A manufacturer is a company that makes whatever it is. So in this case, it's motor manufacturers. Manufacturers. So notice we have this awkward double R because here I have manufacture. Manufacture. For example, you can use this as a verb. GM manufactures fridges. So notice this R, manufactures. But I could also say GM is a manufacturer. Manufacturer. That's a tricky pronunciation. Manufacturer. If you want to avoid this, you can always say GM manufactures fridges to avoid that. Governments and motor manufacturers around the world are throwing money and resources into the development of electric vehicles. Notice the pronunciation, vehicle, vehicle, vehicle. Of course, a vehicle is a term that includes different types of machines with motors. For example, cars, vans, trucks, SUVs. They are vehicles. Vehicles. Now, when they say governments are throwing money and resources, it means they're spending it very freely. Spending it freely. Spending freely. So it implies they're spending a lot of money. Now, we do have one expression that is more of a negative that uses this. Don't throw your money away. Don't throw your money away. This is used to say don't spend your money so freely that you don't have any left. And we commonly include a specific time that you would do this. Don't throw your money away at the casino, because when you go to a casino, what do people do? They throw money at the slot machines, or they throw money at the poker table, which means they spend their money freely. But if someone gives you advice and says, don't throw your money away, they're advising you not to spend your money so freely. So governments are throwing money and resources into the development of electric vehicles, but can electric power really replace the internal combustion engine? The internal combustion engine is just the type of engine that's used on gas-powered vehicles. You don't really need to use this. You can just refer to it as a vehicle. Before the middle of the century, maybe it can, but this is by no means certain. So again, if you didn't answer before, what do you think? Can electric vehicles replace gas-powered vehicles? Can electric vehicles replace the internal combustion engine, which is found on all gas-powered vehicles? You can put realistic or optimistic in the comments. And I have made all the notes available in a free lesson PDF, so you can look in the description for the link to download this free lesson PDF. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, the movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Let's continue on. Electric vehicles have arrived. Notice the use of the present perfect. This is because it's a past action. Electric vehicles are currently on the market. So they're not arriving in a future context. They have arrived. It's a past action, but there's a connection to the present. That connection is now you can buy an electric vehicle. You can replace your gas-powered vehicle, your internal combustion engine vehicle, with an electric vehicle. Is that a change that you're going to do? Are you going to replace one for the other? So have arrived, this is the present perfect. And it's a past action with a present consequence. With technology led by Tesla and all of the world's major car manufacturers, remember that another chance to practice, I'll read that again, and all of the world's major car manufacturers following along behind. When you follow along behind, it means one car manufacturer makes the change, and then the other car manufacturers start making that same change. So follow along behind. We also have a common expression with other manufacturers following suit. And it means the same thing. I do this, so then my friend does it as well. She follows suit. Electric vehicles are now a common sight on the roads of most developed countries. So what about in your country? Do you see a lot of electric vehicles? In Canada, I see more and more electric vehicles. I remember 5 years ago, it was very rare to see a Tesla. Now, I would say 1 out of 10 cars are electric vehicles. That's just a complete guess. I do not know if that's accurate, but that's just based on when I'm driving. There's one. It's very common. Almost every parking lot now has electric charging stations for electric cars to charge. So what about in your country? What's the situation? Share that in the comments as well. Yet, the situation in less developed countries is rather different. Let's talk about this use of yet. Yet. This is a conjunction, and it's used to show a contrast. The contrast is in developed countries, electric cars are very common. In less developed countries, they're not very common. So we have a contrasting situation. I can combine those ideas with the word yet. It's similar to however or but. However, the situation in less developed countries, but the situation in less developed countries. However sounds quite formal, but sounds less formal, and then yet sounds both formal and informal. It's more in the middle, I would say. Yet, the situation in less developed countries is rather different. Rather is used as an adverb to show that it's more different. So we have in less developed countries, the situation is different. It's rather different. So I'm increasing the amount of difference between them. So I could say, I'm tired, or I could say, I'm rather tired. When I add rather, it increases the amount that I am tired. It sounds stronger. The only African country to have started the change to electric vehicles is South Africa. And even there, electric vehicles still account for less than 0.01% of the total number of cars on the roads. Notice how I said this number, 0.01%. Now, when something accounts for something, it means it makes up that amount. For example, Spanish speakers, people who speak Spanish, Spanish speakers account for 50% of my audience. I have no idea if this is true. Said another way, 50% of my audience is Spanish speakers. I use the verb is because audience is a collective noun and is conjugated as singular. So notice the sentence structure. You have something, and then you have to account for. Account is a verb. So if it's a past, maybe last year, Spanish speakers accounted for 50% of my audience. So this is a verb. You conjugate it. Accounted for, then you have a number, 50%, 10%, 25%, and then of, and then whatever the total is. In South America, this situation is better, with all Latin American countries beginning to move towards electric vehicles, particularly Colombia, which in 2020 had a third of the continent's total electric car fleet. Now, if you're from South America, you probably realize that the author of this article spelled Colombia wrong. This is a common mistake that Americans make because we have a lot of places and companies with the spelling U, Colombia, but it's pronounced the exact same way. I did not write this article. This was not my mistake. I've been to Colombia. I know how to spell it. Colombia is with an O, but the pronunciation is exactly the same. But unfortunately for people who live in Colombia, this is a mistake that native speakers make quite frequently. Particularly Colombia. Notice particularly. So we're highlighting Colombia. Here's a car example. I love all luxury car manufacturers. I included this just so you can practice that pronunciation. I love all luxury car manufacturers, particularly Audi. So I'm highlighting Audi. I'm giving more attention to Audi, even though all the luxury car manufacturers are represented. So all South American countries are represented, but Colombia with an O is highlighted because they said particularly Colombia, which in 2020 had a third of the continent's total electric car fleet. Let's take a look at fleet. This is a noun and it's specifically used with vehicles. Our company has a fleet of 200 luxury vehicles. A fleet simply represents the total number of vehicles controlled by a company. Now, it could also be controlled by the organization. The Army has a fleet of tanks, a fleet of planes as well. So it's the total number of tanks or planes that the Army or government controls. Let's continue on. In Russia, the wealthy are investing in imported electric vehicles. So you invest in something. You could say, and hopefully you will if you agree with me, it's a wise decision to invest in improving your English skills. You're investing in improving your English skills right now. You're investing your time, your attention. It's a wise decision to invest in. Notice my preposition in, invest in. Now, you invest in something. You can say invest in your English skills, but you can also invest in doing something. So in this case, you need a verb. And that verb needs to be an ing verb. Invest in improving your English skills. In Russia, the wealthy are investing in importing electric cars, but no electric cars are yet manufactured locally. So here we have the ED, so let's focus on the pronunciation. I have my R, manufactured, and then I add a soft D, manufactured. Manufactured, are yet manufactured locally. In this case, yet does not represent a contrast. It doesn't represent however or but like we saw before. In this case, yet represents until now, and we frequently use yet with the negative. And we commonly use this with the present perfect. I haven't bought an electric vehicle yet. So this means until now, but it's in the present perfect because it's possible for me to buy an electric vehicle. So I could add, I haven't bought an electric vehicle yet, but I plan on buying one next year. So notice I use but to add that contrast. I haven't, I'm buying one. I haven't bought one, I'm buying one. So there's a contrast, and I combine those two sentences together with the conjunction yet. And remember, in this case, yet does not mean but. It means until now. While in India, the government is promoting the purchase of electric vehicles with tax exemptions. When you're exempt from something, the verb exempt, it means you are not subject to it. You don't have to do it. So if there is a policy that everyone needs to buy a certain shirt for work, a black shirt for work, but you're exempt from that policy. So all of your coworkers need to buy a black shirt, but you can wear a purple shirt or a white shirt because you're exempt. Now, if you have a tax exemption, it means you don't have to pay certain taxes and other incentive. An incentive is something financial or some other benefit to try to encourage you to do something. That would be an incentive. So maybe the incentive is that you get a rebate back. A rebate is money back. So if you paid $30,000 for the car, maybe you get $5,000 back. So that would be an incentive, a rebate. So that's money back after a purchase. Let's continue. So electric cars have arrived, remember, are present perfect, and their share of the market is increasing almost worldwide. So again, in your country, have you seen the share of electric vehicles in the market increase over the years? Does this mean, therefore, that the world is on track to phase out the use of gas-driven vehicles in less than 30 years? If you're on track or on track to do something, it means you're progressing towards your goal at the expected rate. So let's say your goal is to buy an electric vehicle by 2025. So to do that, you need to save money. Okay, so every month you save $1,000. This is your goal. And 1 year later, 2 years later, after starting this goal, you can say, I'm on track to achieve my goal, or I'm on track to buy the electric vehicle by 2020, or you can simply say, I'm on track. I'm on track. So if someone asks you, oh, how's your progress? Are you getting closer to that electric vehicle? You can say, yep, I'm on track. I'm on track. You're progressing towards your goal at the expected rate. So does that mean, therefore, that the world is on track to phase out the use of gas-driven vehicles in less than 30 years? So this is the goal, to phase out gas-driven vehicles, the internal combustion engine, in less than 30 years. So what does phase out mean? Phase out is a phrasal verb that means to gradually reduce something until it is no longer used. So of course, we're not going to go from driving gas-powered vehicles today and tomorrow not driving gas-powered vehicles. That's not realistic, obviously. So what are we going to do? Every year, we can increase the number of electric vehicles on the market and decrease the number of gas-powered vehicles. So right now, gas-powered, electric, but soon is going to change, right? And eventually, gas-powered vehicles are not going to exist because they have been so gradually reduced until they're no longer used. That's to phase out. So do you think it's realistic to phase out the use of gas-driven vehicles in 30 years? So 30 years from today, gas-powered vehicles don't exist. Do you think that's possible? You can share that in the comments as well. Now that's the goal. So are they on track to achieve this goal? I don't know. And does it mean that electric vehicles are the sustainable solution to our transport needs for the second half of the century? Unfortunately, unfortunately, I'm using this word as an adverb to deliver disappointing news because this sounds really positive, especially given the cost of gas. Every day, the cost of gas is going up, and the environmental damage caused by gas-powered vehicles. It seems very positive that we're phasing out gas-powered vehicles and phasing in electric vehicles. But this article uses, unfortunately, to deliver disappointing news because people want this to happen. Well, some people. Unfortunately, to the disappointment of some people, notice how I changed some people, because if you just say people want this to happen, it sounds like everybody wants this to happen. But I'm sure there are some people who want to continue driving gas-powered vehicles. Some people who don't want to use electric vehicles, right? So that's why we have to use some people. Otherwise, it sounds like all people. The answer to both of these questions has to be no. And that's the end of the article, so we don't know why the answer is no. But remember, both of these questions, so what are the questions? The first question is, are we on track to phase out the use of gas-driven vehicles? And are electric vehicles the sustainable solution to our transport needs? Those are the two questions. Very interesting discussion questions, so you're more than welcome to share your thoughts in the comment section. Now what I'll do is I will read this article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. The electric car revolution. Is it realistic or optimistic? Governments and motor manufacturers around the world are throwing money and resources into the development of electric vehicles. But can electric power really replace the internal combustion engine before the middle of the century? Maybe it can, but this is by no means certain. Electric vehicles have arrived. With technology led by Tesla and all of the world's major car manufacturers following along behind, electric vehicles are now a common sight on the roads of most developed countries. Yet the situation in less developed countries is rather different. The only African country to have started the change to electric vehicles is South Africa. And even there, electric vehicles still account for less than 0.01% of the total number of cars on the roads. In South America, the situation is better, with all Latin American countries beginning the move towards electric vehicles, particularly Colombia, which, in 2020, had a third of the continent's total electric car fleet. In Russia, the wealthy are investing in imported electric cars, but no electric cars are yet manufactured locally. While in India, the government is promoting the purchase of electric vehicles with tax exemptions and other incentives. So electric cars have arrived, and their share of the market is increasing almost worldwide. Does this mean, therefore, that the world is on track to phase out the use of gas-driven vehicles in less than 30 years? And does it mean that electric vehicles are the sustainable solution to our transport needs for the second half of the century? Unfortunately, to the disappointment of some people, the answer to both of these questions has to be no. I hope you enjoyed that article. Now let's continue to the next one. First, I'll read the headline, Robotaxi Expansion Gets Green Light in San Francisco. So we're talking about robo-taxis, autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles. So a self-driving taxi. Have you ever been in a self-driving vehicle? I have not. So let's talk about this. The expansion gets green light. It's appropriate that they use this idiom. This is an idiom in English. I will explain what it means in just a second, but it's appropriate they use this idiom because we're talking about vehicles, and vehicles obviously use green light, yellow light, red light frequently. So it's very appropriate they use this idiom. Now, what does this mean? The green light in this idiom simply means approval. So the robotaxi expansion gets approval. Now notice here they omitted the article the. The idiom is to get the green light. In newspaper headlines, they commonly omit articles to make the headline as short as possible, but grammatically it is required. So the idiom is to get the green light from someone to do something. So you can think of it as approval or permission. Both of them have the same meaning. For example, I got the green light from my boss to attend the conference. So the verb is get. You need to conjugate that. This is the past simple. I got the green light, remember, from someone to do something, from my boss to attend the conference, which means I got approval from my boss to attend the conference. Now, don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can look for the link in the description. Let's continue. 2 robotaxi companies have been given the green light. So notice here, because it's no longer the headline, they use the correct grammatical structure. And notice here that it's to be given the green light. So the companies were given, have been given, which means they've received approval. So you can give the green light to someone to do something. Let's review these 3 sentences. So this is the sentence I provided above. I got the green light from my boss to attend the conference. Now, I could also talk about my boss giving me the green light to do something. In this case, I'm talking about receiving approval. In this example, I'm talking about my boss giving approval. My boss gave me the green light to attend the conference, or I could also use the structure to be given. I've been given the green light to attend the conference. Different grammatical structures, they all communicate the same thing: approval, permission. 2 robotaxi companies have been given the green light to start charging for service throughout San Francisco. The move marks a major expansion. Let's take a look at this. To mark a major expansion. Mark is a verb, to mark, and when something, the move, marks something else, a major expansion, it simply represents that something has happened. So this, the move, represents that this has happened. For example, today marks our first wedding anniversary. So today represents that something has happened, that our first wedding anniversary has happened. So something marks something. And we usually use this with significant events like a birthday, anniversary, or a national celebration or holiday, or an important world event like this major expansion of self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles. The move marks a major expansion for the companies, which previously faced limits on when or where they could charge for rides. When you charge for something, it means you require that someone pay for something. So you can charge the passengers for rides, but you don't need to include the someone if it's obvious. Obviously, they're charging the people who are using the service, so you don't need to say that. To charge for rides, to require that the passengers pay for rides. Approval from regulators came despite objections. So remember, approval, this represents our idiom, the green light. So you could say the green light from regulators came despite objections from police and fire officials, activists, and others. Thinking about our other sentence structures, you could say the regulators gave them meaning the robotaxi companies, the regulators gave them the green light despite objections from police. So that would be said another way, but they have the same meaning. And I forgot the word light, so I added that in here because it's the green light. This is the expression that represents approval. So approval from regulators came despite objections from police and fire officials, activists, and others. So this means that these groups, all of these groups had objections, but they still gave them the green light. They still gave them approval. Analysts say the decision could usher in a new era for driverless car services. Let's take a look at this, to usher in. The phrasal verb here is to usher, this is our verb, to usher something in. And in this case, the something is a new era for driverless car services. All of this represents the something. When you usher something in, it simply means you welcome something or you signal the beginning of something, and that something is usually an important event. So in the world, because right now driverless cars, autonomous vehicles are not very common, this is an important event for the world, for the economy. So we can usher in this new era of driverless car services. Another important event that many people usher in, welcome, is the new year. And most people celebrate the new year. So you could use this phrasal verb to indicate how you welcome the new year, how you celebrate the new year. We ushered in the new year by celebrating with friends. Waymo, which shares a parent company with Google, so somehow Waymo is related to Google, and Waymo has been offering free rides in its driverless cars since last year, called the decision the true beginning of our commercial operations in San Francisco. So Waymo is one of the robo-taxi companies. So obviously they're going to be very positive about getting the green light. So remember, Waymo as the company, they're the ones receiving approval. So you would say Waymo got the green light to expand their robo-taxi operations. I'll write that for you. So I wrote that for you here. Waymo got the green light to expand the robo-taxi operations. Now notice here they said they've been offering free rides. And remember before I said they can now start charging. So when you charge, you require someone to pay. When something is free, they don't have to pay. So let's say you flag down one of the taxis and you can say, oh, how much is it? And they could say, oh, it's free. Or there's no charge. If someone says, oh, there's no charge, it's another way of saying it's free. I wrote that here for you. How much is it? It's free. This is the same as saying there's no charge. Driverless car services have been slow to live up to the promises of transforming transport that accompanied the start of their development more than a decade ago. Okay, so this suggests that a decade ago, when the driverless car services began, when they developed, they said, we will transform the transport industry, but they haven't done that. This is what it means by they've been slow to live up to the promise. So of course, you know what slow means. It hasn't happened quickly. Let's talk about live up to the promises. To live up to the promises, this means to fulfill the promises. So if you do live up to the promises, it means you fulfilled them. And if you don't live up to the promises, which is what they're suggesting here, it means you don't fulfill the promises. Now, we also use this expression with expectations. To live up to something, very commonly promises and expectations. Now, if you live up to expectations, it means it's as good as the expectation. The expectation is what you think is going to happen. So let's say you're going to a new movie, the Barbie movie or Oppenheimer, and everyone says the movie is amazing. So your expectation is high. So if you say the movie lived up to my expectation, it means it was as good as you were expecting. And remember, you were expecting it to be good. You could also say it exceeded my expectations. So that means it was better than you expected. But if you say it didn't live up to my expectations, it means it was worse than you were expecting. So here, the movie was good, but it didn't live up to my expectations. Because remember, you thought the movie was going to be amazing. So your expectation was here, but then the movie was just here. So it didn't live up to your expectations. And hopefully you always live up to your promises, which means you fulfill your promises. If you say you're going to do something, you live up to that. You do it. So driverless car services have been slow to live up to the promises of transforming transport that accompanied the start of their development more than a decade ago. They have been bogged down by technology glitches. Okay, let's look at bogged down by and also glitches. A glitch is a problem or error, and we usually use this with technology glitches. In this case, because it's plural, problems or errors. Now, when something bogs something else down, it means that something like the glitches prevent someone or something from progressing. So this means that the glitches, the errors, the problems are preventing the companies from progressing with their project. So they have been bogged down. It's just written in the passive form. The companies, the robotaxi companies, have been bogged down by these glitches, have been prevented from progressing by these glitches. Not just the glitches, there's also safety fears and high-profile accidents involving vehicles. If something is described as high profile, here the noun is accident and the adjective is high profile. A high profile accident is an accident that gets a lot of attention. So a high profile issue, a high profile person is an issue or person that gets a lot of attention. I wrote that down here. Now let's continue. The California Public Utilities Commission had twice postponed the vote. When you postpone something, it means you delay something. So if the vote was to take place on August 1st, but it was postponed, it means it was rescheduled to a date after August 1st. It could have been August 2nd. It could have just been postponed for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. We don't know how long. It's just later than scheduled. So delayed, postponed, delayed the vote. And on Thursday, heard more than 6 hours of testimony from the public, including supporters and critics. So testimony, this is simply the opinions, the expertise, the thoughts of the public related to this specific issue of approving or denying the robotaxi expansion. So they heard it from both supporters, people who say, yes, I want the robotaxi companies to expand, and then critics, those who say, no, I don't want that to happen. The board, this is the board, the California Public Utilities Commission, that is the board, approved the expansion 3-1. So 3 people said, yes, I approve. 1 person said, no, I don't approve. So there were 4 people in total on this board. Let's continue. Critics, people who opposed the expansion, critics raised concerns about safety records and claimed the cars often caused traffic incidents by abruptly shutting down. When something shuts down, it stops operating. And if it happens abruptly, it means it happens quickly and also without any warning. Let's look at this example. The glitches, remember this was errors or problems. The glitches caused my computer to abruptly shut down. So to stop working, stop operating, and it happened very quickly without any warning. You were typing a document and then all of a sudden your computer turned off. That would be abruptly shutting down. Then you could say, I'm still waiting on the green light from my boss to buy a new one, because your boss has to give you the green light to buy a new computer because the company is paying for that computer. Let's continue. In the statement announcing the approval, commissioners acknowledge that data on how autonomous vehicle safety records compare with regular cars was limited. So they approved it. The commissioners are the people on this board, the commission, California Public Utilities Commission. This is the board, and this word commission, that's where the word commissioners, people who are on the board, people who are part of the commission, that's where that comes from. So these people, the 4 people, even though they approved the expansion, they gave it the green light, they acknowledge, they said publicly that they don't have data on the safety of the robo-taxis compared to a regular taxi. But clearly that did not prevent them from giving the green light. And that's the end of our article. So I have a question for you. Do you give me the green light to make more videos just like this one? If so, then you can put in the comment section, Jennifer, I give you the green light to make more videos. Of course, I want you to practice this expression, which is why I want you to leave this in the comments. And I also want to see if you like this video. So if you give me the green light, then I know that you like this video and you want me to keep making more videos just like this one. If this is too long for you to write, I understand. You could also just simply put green light in the comment section so I know you want me to make more videos just like this one. So put that in the comments, only if you approve, of course. Now that's the end of the article. So what I'll do is I'll go to the beginning, I'll read the article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Robotaxi expansion gets green light in San Francisco. 2 robotaxi companies have been given the green light to start charging for service throughout San Francisco. The move marks a major expansion for the companies, which previously faced limits on when or where they could charge for rides. Approval from regulators came despite objections from police and fire officials, activists, and others. Analysts say the decision could usher in a new era for driverless car services. Waymo, which shares a parent company with Google and has been offering free rides in its driverless cars since last year, called the decision the true beginning of our commercial operations in San Francisco. Driverless car services have been slow to live up to the promises of transforming transport that accompanied the start of their development more than a decade ago. They have been bogged down by technology glitches, safety fears, and high-profile accidents involving vehicles. The California Public Utilities Commission had twice postponed the vote and on Thursday heard more than 6 hours of testimony from the public, including supporters and critics. The board approved the expansion 3-1. Critics raised concerns about safety records and claimed the cars often caused traffic incidents by abruptly shutting down or failing to make way for emergency responders. In the statement announcing the approval, commissioners acknowledged that data on how autonomous vehicle safety records compare with regular cars was limited. I hope you enjoyed that article. Now let's continue to the next one. Our headline, nice and short, Life on Mars. A very interesting topic. A new study published in the journal Science shows definitive evidence of organic matter on the surface of Mars. Organic matter simply means living matter, matter that is living. For example, in this picture, it looks like there's some green. When you see green, you think plants, so it looks like living matter, organic matter. Now let's take a look at this. Shows evidence, shows definitive evidence. When I see this, I say, wow, definitive evidence. Definitive is an adjective that means firm, final, or complete. So this evidence is firm, it's final. You can think of it as not to be questioned. So you can't question this evidence. It's firm and final. So real evidence. It makes it a lot stronger. Of organic matter on the surface of Mars. Now notice here we have the journal Science, and you see that Science has a capital S. This is because it's a proper noun, and you need to capitalize the first letter of a proper noun. Proper noun, and it's a proper noun because the name of the journal is Science. That's why it has a capital S. But if you were just talking about the subject, science, I love science class, you don't need to capitalize it because in this case, it's not a proper noun. The data was collected by NASA's nuclear-powered rover Curiosity. Again, this is a great example. Curiosity, which you probably know as a noun, curiosity is a good thing when you're a student, but in this case, it's the name of the rover. The name of the rover is Curiosity, and that's why we have a capital first letter. It's a proper noun. It confirms, the rover Curiosity confirms earlier findings that the red planet once contained carbon-based compounds. I'll be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what a carbon-based compound is. It's a compound that contains carbon. That's all I know about that. Red planet is another name for the planet Mars because it is red. So when you see red planet, you know they're talking about Mars. These compounds, they're talking about the carbon-based compounds, also called organic molecules, are essential ingredients for life as scientists understand it. Now notice how they explain what these compounds are or why they're important, because the average person like me who doesn't have a scientific background has no idea what a carbon-based compound is. So they explain what this is. So now I know, okay, essential meaning very important, extremely important, and not just important, very important. Essential ingredients for life as scientists understand it. So now I know you can't have life without these carbon-based compounds, and they have found definitive evidence that these compounds exist on Mars, the red planet, essentially saying that life on Mars is possible. I've summarized all of the lesson notes and you can find them in a free lesson PDF. You can look for the link in the description or in the first comment. Let's continue. The organic molecules were found in Mars's Gale crater, a large area that may have been a watery lake over 3 billion years ago. The rover encountered traces of the molecule in rocks extracted from the area. When you extract something, it means you remove it or take it out. So they have a rock, and within this rock, there are molecules. So they took those molecules out, they extracted it. This is also the terminology you use if you need to get a tooth removed. you can extract a tooth, which means simply to remove it. So to remove or take out. To remove or take out. And you remove something generally from something else. So you extract the molecules from the rock. The rocks also contain sulfur, which scientists speculate helped preserve the organics even when the rocks were exposed to the harsh radiation on the surface of the planet. Remember, we're talking about the planet Mars. Now let's take a look at this verb, speculate, a very common verb. When you speculate on something, it means you essentially guess what the answer is. And you do that because you don't have enough information to be certain. If you're certain, it means you 100% know. So you can present that information as a fact. But if you're just guessing, you use the verb speculate. So when your audience hears speculate, they know that you are not 100% certain. You are, in fact, guessing. So scientists speculate, so they don't actually know that this is 100% correct. It's their best guess based on the information they have. Scientists speculate helped preserve the organics even when the rocks were exposed to the harsh radiation. Let's take a look at harsh. Harsh is an adjective. So I could say exposed to the radiation, which means the radiation affected it. It was in the same area as the radiation. So it was exposed to the radiation, to the harsh radiation. So harsh is an adjective that modifies radiation. And harsh means unpleasant, unkind, cruel, or more severe than necessary. So radiation is very strong, and they're saying that this radiation was very severe, perhaps more severe than it usually is. The harsh radiation on the surface of the planet. Let's move on. Scientists are quick to state that the presence of these organic molecules is not sufficient evidence for ancient life on Mars, as the molecules could have been formed by non-living processes. So here they're casting some doubt. Ancient life on Mars? So they're saying right now we don't have enough evidence to say that previously, in ancient times, there was life on Mars. So that would be ancient life. So not sufficient is saying we don't have enough evidence. Not sufficient. So not enough. Not enough to be convincing. Not enough. And in this case, to convince. You could say, I don't have sufficient time. So in that case, it's not enough time to do something. I don't have sufficient time to complete this article. I don't have enough time to do it. So the scientists are suggesting there could be another reason why these molecules are there. But it's still one of the most astonishing discoveries, which could lead to future revelations. Let's take a look at astonishing as an adjective. This means surprising, or it can be amazing. That was astonishing. That was amazing. But maybe it was, oh, that was astonishing. It was surprising at the same time. So it depends on how it's being used. In this case, it could be really either. The most astonishing discoveries, which could lead to future revelations. Let's look at revelation. In this case, it's a noun. It comes from the verb reveal. So when you reveal something, you make that information known. It's the same case as a revelation. A revelation is when a fact becomes known. Now, it can be when a unknown fact becomes known. So before we didn't know it, and now we know it. It's a revelation. Or it can be when a secret fact becomes known. So certain people knew it, but the general public did not. So when the general public found out, what a revelation. Remember, this comes from the verb to reveal. And you reveal a secret, which means you share a secret that you previously had not shared. Especially when one considers the other startling find that Curiosity uncovered around 5 years ago. Remember, Curiosity is the name of NASA's rover, which is the machine that operates on the surface of the planet Mars. Now let's look at startling as an adjective. A startling find, when something is startling, it's surprising, but usually in a worrisome way. So you could say, I went to the doctor and I got some startling news. That doesn't sound very good because it's news that surprised you, but generally in a negative way, in a worrisome way. So especially when one considers the other startling find that Curiosity uncovered around 5 years ago. So we'll find out what that startling find is. That surprising find, but somehow in some sort of a negative way, perhaps a worrisome way. The rover analyzes the air around it periodically. Periodically is an adverb that means from time to time, periodically. From time to time. So consistently means all the time, but periodically means perhaps once a week or once a day. So on a schedule, but not all the time, which would be consistently. And in 2014, rover, it found the air contained another of the most basic organic molecules and a key ingredient of natural gas, methane. So the rover found another molecule on the planet Mars, methane. One of the characteristics of methane is that it only survives a few hundred years. So a few hundred, to me, that sounds like 300, maybe 400, maybe 500, because a few is more than two, because two is a couple. A couple hundred years is two, and few is generally more than two, but definitely less than 10, 3 to 5, I would say, a few hundred years. This means that something somewhere on Mars is replenishing the supply. When something is replenished, it means it's filled up again. So for example, if a lake had water and then there was a drought, very dry conditions, and all the water evaporated. So if you put more water in that lake, you're replenishing the lake. You're filling the lake again. So they're saying that something on the planet Mars is replenishing the supply of methane, which could be the startling find. It's surprising, and maybe there's reason to be concerned. What is this that's replenishing the supply? How is it doing this? What does it mean for us on Earth? That could be the startling part. According to NASA, Mars emits thousands of tons of methane at a time. The verb emit simply means to produce or to send out. To produce or send out. But we use this in very specific cases. We use it with gases in this case. We also use this with sounds. So the truck emits a lot of gas, for one, and a lot of noise. Oh, the sound that truck is emitting or the building is emitting, it's really hurting my ears. We also use this for light. So the airport emits a lot of light. It's blinding. Mars emits thousands of tons of methane at a time. The level of methane rises and falls at seasonal intervals in the year, almost as if the planet is breathing it. Sounds a little strange. Perhaps that's the startling information here. NASA suspects the methane comes from deep under the surface of the planet. The variations in temperature on the surface of Mars cause the molecule, which is methane, to flow upwards at higher or lower levels. Okay, so this is the scientists are speculating, because if you suspect something, you don't know for sure. Otherwise, you would say NASA knows the methane comes, but they suspect, which means they're about 80% sure. They're guessing. So again, you could also use the verb speculate. NASA speculates the methane comes from deep under the surface. So they don't know 100%. For example, in the winter, the gas could get trapped in underground icy crystals. Okay, so this is what's happening to the methane. These crystals, called clathrates, melt in the summer and release the gas. So this is their theory on how this gas is being released at different times of the year. In winter, it's frozen. The gas is frozen in these icy crystals. But in summer, when these crystals melt, they release the methane. Again, this is not a fact because they're speculating. They suspect this is what is happening. They don't know it to be true. However, the source of the methane is still a complete mystery. Complete is an adjective, and it means very great or the highest possible. So we're saying it's a mystery, but not just a mystery. Imagine the greatest mystery you've ever thought of. That's a complete mystery. It's a very great mystery, the highest mystery possible. It's a complete mystery. So the source, meaning how the methane is there originally. Where does the methane come from? That is a complete mystery. The world of astrobiology considers both of these studies a historical milestone. A milestone is an important event, and it's an important event in history or in your life as well. An important event in history or one's life. For example, one of the big milestones is when you graduate from school. That's a milestone. That's an important event in your life. When you graduate, when you get married, when you get your first job, when you have a baby, you buy your first car, buy your first house. These are all milestones. But of course, there are also historical milestones. And the information found in these studies is one of those milestones. According to this information, Mars is not a dead planet. So of course, a dead planet would be a planet that cannot sustain life. On the contrary, we use this as a transition word when we want to introduce a contrasting point. So dead planet is the one point. Now the contrasting point would have to show something with life. And we can use on the contrary. Mars is not a dead planet. On the contrary, it is quite active with life, with molecules, with organic matter, and may be changing and becoming more habitable. If you describe something as habitable, it means you're able to live there because the conditions are appropriate. So able to live there. For example, a very, very old house that has a lot of damage might not be habitable. It's not suitable to live there. You're not able to live there. Or after a flood or natural disaster, maybe your home is no longer habitable. Of course, this means further research is necessary. Scientists say they need to send new equipment to Mars, equipment that can measure the air and soil with more precision. More precision is another way of saying more accuracy. Accuracy. They need to be more accurate. There are already missions underway. Underway means they're in progress now. In progress now. In progress now. The European Space Agency's ExoMars ship lands in 2020 and will be able to drill into the ground on Mars to analyze what it finds. Additionally, NASA is sending another Mars rover in the same year to collect samples of Martian soil and return them to Earth. So, Martian, this comes from the word Mars. Just like if you live in Italy, you're an Italian. If you live on Mars, you're a Martian. That can be something you can maybe look forward to. So live on Mars equals Martian. Martian soil, Italian wine, pizza, tomatoes, for example, Martian soil. And notice how Mars, Martian, Earth also have that capital first letter because they are proper nouns. Remember, we talked about proper nouns at the beginning. Proper nouns, so you need capital first letter. And here, NASA is in all capitals because we also capitalize acronyms. So each letter stands for something. To be honest, I don't know what NASA stands for. I think the SA is Space Agency. National, what's the A? Association? Space Agency? That doesn't sound right. What is the acronym for NASA? Do you know? Put it in the comments because honestly, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure SA is Space Agency, but I don't know what the N and the A stand for because nobody ever says it. Everybody says NASA. Let's continue. Again, let me know in the comments. The possibility of life on Mars has fascinated humans for generations. It has been the subject of endless science fiction novels and films. If you describe something as endless, it means again and again and again. So as you know, there are always movies and books about aliens, Martians, life on other planets, right? So again and again and again, non-ending. Again and again, non-ending, endless. Are we alone in the universe? Ooh. Or have there been other life forms within our solar system? If the current missions to the red planet, which again means Mars, if the current missions to the red planet continue, it looks as if we may discover the answer very soon. Wow, isn't that an interesting way to end an article? So that's our article on Mars. Now I will go back and I'll read the article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Life on Mars. A new study published in the journal Science shows definitive evidence of organic matter on the surface of Mars. The data was collected by NASA's nuclear-powered rover Curiosity. It confirms earlier findings that the red planet once contained carbon-based compounds. These compounds, also called organic molecules, are essential ingredients for life as scientists understand it. The organic molecules were found in Mars's Gale crater. a large area that may have been a watery lake over 3 billion years ago. The rover encountered traces of the molecule in rocks extracted from the area. The rocks also contain sulfur, which scientists speculate helped preserve the organics even when the rocks were exposed to the harsh radiation on the surface of the planet. Scientists are quick to state that the presence of these organic molecules is not sufficient evidence for ancient life on Mars, as the molecules could have been formed by non-living processes. But it's still one of the most astonishing discoveries, which could lead to future revelations. Especially when one considers the other startling find that Curiosity uncovered around 5 years ago. The rover analyzes the air around it periodically, and in 2014, it found the air contained another of the most basic organic molecules and a key ingredient of natural gas, methane. One of the characteristics of methane is that it only survives a few hundred years. This means that something, somewhere on Mars, is replenishing the supply. According to NASA, Mars emits thousands of tons of methane at a time. This level of methane rises and falls at seasonal intervals in the year, almost as if the planet is breathing it. NASA suspects the methane comes from deep under the surface of the planet. The variations in temperature on the surface of Mars cause the molecule to flow upwards at higher and higher levels. For example, in the winter, the gas could get trapped in underground icy crystals. These crystals, called clathrates, melt in the summer and release the gas. However, the source of the methane is still a complete mystery. The world of astrobiology considers both of these studies as historical milestones. According to this information, Mars is not a dead planet. On the contrary, it is quite active and may be changing and becoming more habitable. Of course, this means further research is necessary. Scientists say they need to send new equipment to Mars, equipment that can measure the air and soil with more precision. There are already missions underway. The European Space Agency's ExoMars ship lands in 2020 and will be able to drill into the ground on Mars to analyze what it finds. Additionally, NASA is sending another Mars rover in the same year to collect samples of Martian soil and return them to Earth. The possibility of life on Mars has fascinated humans for generations. It has been the subject of endless science fiction novels and films. Are we alone in the universe, or have there been other life forms within our solar system? If the current missions to the red planet continue, it looks as if we may discover the answer very soon. I hope you enjoyed that article. Now let's continue to the next one. Our article is called Time Travel. Let's start the first section. Time travel took a small step away from science fiction and toward science. So you have here is science fiction. Fiction is the opposite of fact. So we have two categories. We have fiction, which is not real, like Harry Potter. And then we have nonfiction, which is real, like a historical biography or autobiography. I wrote those definitions here. So time travel took a step away from fiction, so away from not true and toward true. Here, notice how we have the word toward as a preposition. Two spellings are correct. You can say toward or towards with an S. So if you hear someone say towards with an S, it's not incorrect. Both of them are grammatically correct and acceptable. And towards science recently, when physicists discovered that subatomic particles known as neutrinos neutrinos, just listen to my pronunciation, neutrinos, can exceed the speed of light. So if you exceed something, it means you've gone beyond it. Now, in this case, they're talking about speed. So to go beyond means to go faster than. If you exceeded your spending limit on your credit card, you've gone beyond that limit, which means you've spent more money than you have available. And notice here we have can, which is a modal verb, and then we have exceed, which is the base verb. So grammatically, you always have modal plus base verb, not the infinitive can to exceed. No, just can exceed. So modal plus base verb can exceed the speed of light. So these neutrinos, which are subatomic particles, don't worry, I don't know what a neutrino is. I don't really know what a subatomic particle is because I'm not a physicist, but I understand that they're particles and they can go faster than the speed of light. That is what I know based on the article. The unassuming particle. Unassuming is an adjective. And when you describe something as unassuming, it means it doesn't attract a lot of interest or attention. So maybe you're walking down a street and there's a restaurant, but it doesn't attract your interest or attention because maybe it's very small. It doesn't look very nice from the outside. There isn't a lot of decorations. The sign for the restaurant is very small, so you almost don't even notice the restaurant. So it's an unassuming restaurant, but you go in and the food is delicious, but you almost didn't notice it because it's unassuming. So these particles, these neutrinos, are unassuming. They don't attract a lot of attention or interest, likely because they're just very small. They're not considered something that's very important in science. The unassuming particle, it is electrically neutral, small, but with a non-zero mass. So this is simply giving us more information about what this particle is, because the average person does not know what a neutrinos is. A physicist knows what this is, but the average person does not. So this is giving us more information on this particle. The unassuming particle, it is electrically neutral, small, but with a non-zero mass and able to penetrate. Now notice here, able to penetrate. Is something missing from this expression? And able to penetrate. The expression is to be able to. That's the full expression. But notice, it is electrically neutral and able to penetrate. So when we have and, you don't need to repeat the main verb. So you can say, for example, she is tall and thin. Okay? She is tall and thin. So you don't have to say she is tall and is thin. You can get rid of this main verb and just say she is tall and thin. The same thing is happening here. The only difference is instead of having one simple word like tall, we have all of this information. So it's easy to forget that this is also attached to able to, because the expression is not able to, it's be able to. Okay, so for example, you can't say she able to speak Japanese. You can't say that. This is grammatically incorrect because the verb to be is missing. So I'll put a frowny face and an X. She is able to speak Japanese. So now this is correct because we have to be able and then your infinitive. So that is what's happening here, and able to, but we're using the verb to be for both sections, before and after and. So don't forget that with able to. and able to penetrate. When you penetrate something, it simply means you go into. So let's say I'm putting cream on my skin. When the cream goes into my skin and you can no longer see it, it means the cream penetrated my skin. It went into my skin. So this neutron, this neutrinos, can go into your skin. It can penetrate the human form. Undetected. So you don't see something going into your skin because they're not visible. They're so small that you can't see them. So that means undetected, not visible, not known, not visible, or not known, undetected. Is on its way to becoming a rock star of the scientific world. When you see this dash here and then another dash, it means you can remove all of the information between the dashes and the sentence would be grammatically correct. For example, let me read it without the information in blue. The unassuming particle is on its way to becoming a rock star of the scientific world. Grammatically correct. The information between the dashes is additional supplementary information. And in this case, it gives you more information about what the neutrinos is because, as I said, the average person just doesn't know. Don't worry about writing all this down because I summarize everything in the free lesson PDF. So you can look in the description below to download the free lesson PDF. Let's continue. Researchers in Geneva sent the neutrinos hurtling through an underground corridor. Let's take a look at hurtling. This means to move very fast, but it also implies in a dangerous way. So when these neutrinos were hurtling through the underground corridor, so imagine the corridor is going straight and the neutrinos are going very fast, but maybe they're banging against the sides of the walls. They're crashing into each other, not in an orderly, straight way. So you can use this, for example, with drivers. You might say the delivery driver hurtled up my driveway. So he came up your driveway, he drove up your driveway very quickly, but also very dangerously. So quickly, and maybe he's swerving. There's an object here. He's going right for it. Maybe you're standing here and he doesn't seem to be stopping. He hurtled up your driveway. Let's continue. Researchers in Geneva sent the neutrinos hurtling through an underground corridor toward their colleagues, or towards, remember, their colleagues 730 kilometers away in Italy. The neutrinos arrived promptly. Promptly is an adverb, and it means quickly, without delay, but also at the scheduled time. So for example, the meeting will start promptly at 9 a.m. Often when you schedule a meeting at 9, some people might come to the meeting 9:03, 9:05, just a little bit late. But if you say the meeting will start promptly at 9, I will start the presentation at 9:00, not 9:01 or 9:02, promptly at 9. So immediately at 9. So in this case, the neutrinos arrived promptly, so we can say quickly without delay. So promptly, in fact, that they triggered what scientists are calling the unthinkable. Let's look at triggered and unthinkable. So first, triggered. When something triggers something, it simply means it causes it to start. So the fact that the neutrinos traveled so promptly caused something else to start. And that something else is that scientists are now rethinking time travel. So that's the something. You could say, for example, speaking in public triggers my anxiety. So speaking in public causes my anxiety to start. I wrote that example here for you. Now, the unthinkable, this is when something is just so shocking or unlikely that it's difficult for you to imagine, difficult for you to actually form a picture. For example, a world without language would be unthinkable. Can you even contemplate? Can you think about what life would be like if nobody spoke any language? Language was not invented. A human being never uttered, which means spoke, never uttered a word, never spoke a word, ever. Could you even imagine how we would interact with each other? It's unthinkable. It's so shocking and unlikely we can't even really think about it. So time travel is another thing that's just unthinkable. Can you imagine what life would be like if we could time travel? It's unthinkable. That everything they have learned, known, or taught stemming from the last 100 years of the physics discipline may need to be reconsidered. So this is the unthinkable, that everything that physicists know about their discipline, they may need to think about it again if time travel is possible. I want to point out the past simple here of the verb learn because you might be confused as to why it has a T. So learnt is the preferred spelling and pronunciation in British English. In American English, which I teach, the preferred spelling and pronunciation is learned. So notice we have a soft T here, learnt. And then in American, learned with a soft D, learned. Both of them are grammatically correct. It's just two countries prefer two different words. Everything they have learned, known, or taught, stemming from. Here, to stem from simply means come from, to come from. Come from. So in this case, because it's in the gerund form, I'll put mine in the gerund form. Coming from the last 100 years of the physics discipline may need to be reconsidered. So when you add re in front of the verb, it means you do the verb again. So you need to consider again. So that means consider again because you add reconsidered. We need to consider it again. So let's say you asked your boss for a promotion and your boss said no. Maybe you could say, can you reconsider? Can you consider my proposal again? And most likely he'll say no. But hey, maybe he'll say, I guess I could reconsider. And then you can explain again why you deserve a promotion. And maybe this time your boss will say yes. So it's always possible for someone to reconsider. The issue at stake. So at stake is simply when something is being considered. So here, the issue being considered, the issue at stake, so being considered, is a tiny segment of time, precisely 60 nanoseconds. So now they're going to explain what 60 nanoseconds is because the average person who is not a physicist does not know. So 60 nanoseconds is 60 billionths of a second. So you have 1 second and then you divide that 1 second into billions and you take 60 of them. For me, I can't really comprehend what 60 billionths of a second is, to be honest, because a second is like that. And imagine you take 60 billionths of that second. It would be so fast. It's unthinkable. I can't even imagine what that would be. So notice I just used unthinkable. This is how much faster than the speed of light the neutrinos manage to go in their underground travels and at a consistent rate. Even allowing for a margin of error of 10 billionths of a second, This stands as proof that it is possible to race against light and win. So here, they're comparing the speed of the neutrinos to the speed of light, which is just so fast that you and I, average people, can't really understand how fast it is because it just happens so quickly. So they're just letting you know it happened faster than the speed of light. And this allowing for a margin of error, they're saying even if our calculation was incorrect, don't worry, it's still accurate. So they accounted for that. They allowed some miscalculation in their formula, and the neutrinos are still faster than the speed of light, even if their calculation is somewhat inaccurate. So that's a margin of error. You'll see this a lot in studies, scientific studies, research studies, a margin of error of 10 billionths of a second. The duration of the experiment, duration is the length. The duration of the experiment, the length of this experiment, the entire time of the experiment. So length or entire time of the experiment also accounted for. When you account for something, you simply consider it. So they considered that margin of error, that their calculation may be somewhat inaccurate. So to consider. Also accounted for, considered. So here, accounted for something. So notice the preposition. You account for something, but you consider something. So we don't use considered for. It's just considered because we don't need the preposition for. And considered and ruled out. The phrasal verb to rule something out is when you no longer have something as a possibility. So to no longer have an option as a possibility. So basically it means to exclude an option, to exclude an option. So let's say you are considering different options. Maybe you're going to give your team a promotion, give them an extra vacation day, or give them free lunch on Fridays. Those are your three options to show your support for your staff. But you're going to rule out promotions. You're going to no longer consider that as an option because you don't have the financial resources to offer promotions and it's very expensive. So you're going to rule out promotions. Now you just have two options to consider. So they ruled out any possible lunar effects. Lunar is the moon, so effects from the moon because the moon can influence time. And tidal bulges. I don't know what a bulge is. I assume it's similar to a wave, and tidal relates to the tide. So going when the water goes in and out, that is called the tide. So tidal bulges in the Earth's crust. So this information is just to let you know that their calculation considered many different factors to understand if they are wrong. And they're still saying, even if we take all of this into account, consider all of this, the neutrinos are still faster than the speed of light. Let's continue. Nevertheless, the transition word nevertheless is used when you are going to have a contrast. So here they're talking about all the reasons why the neutrinos are faster than the speed of light. But now, because I have nevertheless, I know they're going to introduce evidence to say that this might not be true because there has to be a contrast. So this is a transition word used to introduce a contrasting point. Nevertheless, there's plenty of reason to remain skeptical. Skeptical means I'm not sure if I believe you, or I'm not sure if I believe this topic. I'm not sure if I believe that we can travel through time. I'm skeptical. So not sure if the person can be trusted or believed. Person or information. In this case, it's the information they're presenting. Information can be trusted or believed. So I'm skeptical. I'm not sure. According to Harvard University science historian Peter Gallison, Albert Einstein, of course, Einstein's relativity theory has been pushed harder than any theory in the history of the physical sciences. Pushed harder than, it means that every scientist has tried to prove that his theory is not correct. So they've pushed his theory harder than any theory in the history of the physical sciences. Yet each prior challenge, prior means previous, so each challenge that had previously happened, previous. You see this a lot in job interviews. Do you have any prior experience? Do you have any previous experience? So let me write that for you. Do you have any prior experience in Excel? So Excel is a Microsoft software for organizing data. Do you have any prior experience in Excel? Do you have any previous experience? Yet each prior challenge has come to no avail. So remember I said they've tried to prove that Einstein's theory is inaccurate or incorrect, but it's come to no avail, which means they have not been successful. So no avail means not successful. Let's review this example. I asked my boss for a promotion, but to no avail. So notice the expression is to no avail, and this means not successful. So I didn't get the promotion. My boss said no, but to no avail. I'm hopeful he'll reconsider. I'm hopeful, that's just another way of saying I hope he'll reconsider. So remember, we talked about this. Consider it again and change his decision. But he's skeptical. I don't know. I'm not sure if Jennifer's ready for a promotion. He's skeptical that I'm ready for a management position. So here we used a lot of expressions in one thought, one advanced thought. Let's continue. So is time travel just around the corner? When something is just around the corner, it means happening soon. Happening soon. So you could say, my vacation is just around the corner. Happening soon. So is time travel happening soon, just around the corner? The prospect, so the prospect is the idea that time travel is just around the corner. The prospect has certainly been wrenched much closer to the realm of possibility. This simply means moved closer to the realm of possibility, meaning that something is possible. So a simple way of saying this is the prospect has certainly been moved towards possibility. Now that a major physical hurdle, a hurdle is an obstacle, something that prevents you from achieving a goal. So an obstacle, hurdle, obstacle. The speed of light. So this is the obstacle, the hurdle for time travel. The fact that we need to travel faster than the speed of light. And so far, nothing has traveled faster than the speed of light until these neutrinos has been cleared. So to clear the hurdle means to get rid of it, to eliminate it. If particles, these neutrinos, if particles can travel faster than light, in theory, traveling back in time is possible. That's unthinkable, isn't it? How anyone harnesses that, to harness something is when you use something successfully, to use something successfully. Use something successfully. For example, we have now harnessed the power of the sun through solar panels. So you put a solar panel on the roof of your house and it harnesses the sun, the energy of the sun. It uses that energy successfully by then heating your house. So we've already harnessed many things in our environment. Why not time travel? How anyone harnesses that, so how anyone uses time travel successfully to some kind of helpful end is far beyond the scope of any modern technologies. Okay, so far beyond the scope of. When something is beyond the scope of, it means that it is not included in. Not included in. For example, teaching you about Einstein's theory of relativity is beyond the scope of this lesson, which means it's not included in this lesson. It doesn't mean it's not important. It's just beyond the scope of this lesson. It's not included in this lesson. So it's beyond the scope of any modern technology, however, and will be left to future generations to explore. When you leave something to someone, it means that you give the responsibility to someone else. So the future generations now have the responsibility to take the information from this article, the fact that these neutrinos can travel faster than the speed of light, and try to harness that, try to turn it into something tangible that we can use and benefit from. So that's not our responsibility. We're going to leave that to future generations to explore. So that's the end of the article. What I'll do now is I'll go to the beginning and I'll read the article from start to finish, and this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Time travel. Time travel took a small step away from science fiction and towards science recently when physicists discovered that subatomic particles, known as neutrinos, can exceed the speed of light. The unassuming particle, it is electrically neutral, small, but with a non-zero mass, and able to penetrate the human form undetected, is on its way to becoming a rock star of the scientific world. Researchers in Geneva sent the neutrinos hurtling through an underground corridor toward their colleagues 730 kilometers away in Italy. The neutrinos arrived promptly. So promptly, in fact, that they triggered what scientists are calling the unthinkable, that everything they have learned, known, or taught stemming from the last 100 years of the physics discipline may need to be reconsidered. The issue at stake is a tiny segment of time, precisely 60 nanoseconds, which is 60 billionths of a second. This is how much faster than the speed of light the neutrinos manage to go in their underground travels and at a consistent rate. Even allowing for a margin of error of 10 billionths of a second, this stands as proof that it is possible to race against light and win. The duration of the experiment also accounted for and ruled out any possible lunar effects or tidal bulges in the Earth's crust. Nevertheless, there's plenty of reason to remain skeptical. According to Harvard University science historian Peter Galison, Einstein's relativity theory has been pushed harder than any theory in the history of the physical sciences. Yet each prior challenge has come to no avail, and relativity has so far refused to buckle. So is time travel just around the corner? The prospect has certainly been wrenched much closer to the realm of possibility now that a major physical hurdle, the speed of light, has been cleared. If particles can travel faster than light, in theory, traveling back in time is possible. How anyone harnesses that to some kind of helpful end is far beyond the scope of any modern technologies, however, and will be left to future generations to explore. Did you enjoy this masterclass? Do you want me to make another masterclass? If you do, then put masterclass, masterclass, put masterclass in the comments. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And I have another masterclass I know you'll love, so make sure you watch it right now.